Hello, Canada Files viewers. This is Aidan Jonah, editor-in-chief of the Canada Files. I am here co-hosting episode 17 of Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism. I am here with Laith Marouf of Free Palestine TV. Laith, thanks as always for being here.
Good to be with you, Aidan.
Good to be with you, Laith, as well. So we have this world of events coming in right now. Now, I think the number one thing I want to get to right away is two things. We have the second wave of this Israeli terror attack, the second wave of explosions, and then the Lebanese government saying it can't urge restraint to Hezbollah after these attacks. Take people through that because these are, especially the second development I mentioned, are major development.
The Zionists have been conducting a relentless air bombardment campaign focused on residential homes and infrastructure in the south of Lebanon, in the Bekaa Valley, and the mountain ranges with the Syrian border, and a few now two times hitting buildings in the Lahi, the southern suburb of Beirut. Up until now, we're reaching 1,000 martyrs and thousands of injured. This is a number that is very dramatic in comparison to 2006, the 33 day war when the Israelis attempted then to invade Lebanon at the time. In those 33 days, the total number of injured was 11,000, and the total number of martyred was just below the 2,000. And I can hear, by the way, right now, explosions. Clearly, the Zionists are raiding Beirut somehow. We also, so just given the severity of the crimes being committed, it is clear that the whole of the Lebanese society right now is on the side of the resistance. The Lebanese military and the Lebanese state need the defense of Hezbollah to, assert deterrence. And since these genocidal, deliberate targeting of civilians began, Hezbollah up until now has been conducting itself in a very calculated manner. It has carpet bombed all the major Israeli bases from here until south of Haifa. This includes all the major air bases like Ramat Gan and Majdol, just outside Afula, beside the Tabariya Lake. Ramat Gan is just outside Haifa. It was shown in the Hudhud Hopo video, the first surveillance video from a drone that Hezbollah released earlier this year. And these two major air bases have been bombarded at least 6 times since the beginning of the back and forth a few days ago. And the major targets also included the main artillery bases for the Israeli ground forces in the Golan in North Palestine, the major factories for weapons, including the Rafael company military industrial complex north of Haifa, as well as the major explosive chemicals manufacturers in the north of Palestine, as this among others. Also, just yesterday, late at night, Hezbollah hit the major Navy base for the Israeli Navy south of Haifa. And just a few hours ago, earlier in the morning, Hezbollah fired its first ballistic missile, and it hit the Mossad headquarters, Mossad being the Israeli intelligence, the Mossad headquarters in the suburbs of Tel Aviv. So now we are, clearly the targets have been, that Hezbollah has been choosing are related to the assassinations, the conduction of these air raids that we see. And as soon as much of the Lebanese population exits the south. There is a huge exodus right now happening. It is expected that Hezbollah will then begin to target the colonies themselves. We're already seeing uh, colonies that are right on the border, like Kiryat Shmona in the Hula Valley, totally destroyed, burned to a crisp. And others, it's beginning now that Hezbollah is starting to target the residential homes in the colonies in the north of Palestine. This is going to be a long war of attrition. And I don't think Netanyahu um, had actually calculated correctly what he's getting the colony into.
So what I'm thinking about too in terms of Lebanon is this Zionist propaganda about Hezbollah storing missiles and weapons and everything in or under the houses and apartments of Lebanese civilians. What a convenient way to do mass murder and say, "Oh, guys, look, just wait until for 2 weeks and then they'll be in a Lebanese hospital. It was in a Lebanese airport before, right?" My goodness. I mean, next week Israel will be saying there's missiles in the Lebanese orphanages. So just let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the Israelis already began targeting medical facilities. They hit just outside two different hospitals in the south of Lebanon. They already targeted an ambulance and martyred two paramedics and injured at least 14 rescue workers. So the Israelis don't really need an excuse. And clearly, this failed propaganda that they're creating about missiles and homes and what have you is directed only to the Western audience and only the hardcore Zionist Western audience, because even the majority of the Western audience doesn't believe any lies that come out of the mouths of Israeli officials anymore. But you know, that is not going to stop the Israelis from genociding and ethnically cleansing people and targeting civilians. No matter what we talk about, this is actually the main objective of the Zionists. The Zionist only military objective is genocide. They don't have the ability to achieve any other objective in this war against the axis of resistance, or the resistance in Gaza, or the resistance in Lebanon here. The other thing is that, of course, Lebanon is a huge country. It's not like little Gaza that is just a flat land with homes and buildings that you actually, if you want to conduct war, you have no choice but to dig tunnels under and or fire from within residential areas. In the situation of Lebanon, this is a huge country in comparison to Gaza. It has very hard terrain, especially in the south, hills and valleys and mountains, that you can hide as much weapons as you want to in them. And it's no need is there for you to put any weapons in residential homes and or in the villages. So even from a military point of view, it is more advantageous to be hidden in the forest and the valleys and the mountains than within residential villages. So it doesn't make sense, whichever way you look at it, what the Israeli lie is about.
Actually, there we go. It was the Netzarim corridor in terms of the Palestinian resistance in Gaza. Now, I saw that there's some focus there. Snipers and artillery. This first came to my awareness because of electronic intifada, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, the Zionists have been attempting to cut the Gaza Strip into two geographic areas. And what we know is from day one is that they wanted to empty the north of Gaza. You know, we all heard the fascists in Canada, the Zionists in Canada and the US hold these land sale events in synagogues. In what they were trying to sell are these lands in the north of Gaza. This is where the original Zionist fascists were located prior to 2006 when they withdrew, 2004, sorry, when they withdrew from North Gaza. So, and we see every day, by the way, these boat tours of these fascist Zionists, these Jewish supremacists, on the coast of Gaza, doing entertainment events, watching the slaughter, and also doing bids on these boats of the properties in the north of Gaza. So that's one of the major objectives of this corridor. And clearly, the Palestinian resistance is targeting Israeli presence in this corridor. And on the one hand, it's because it is exposed. The Zionists have leveled everything to make this buffer zone. And it's their major supply and transportation route in the heart of Gaza. So the Palestinian resistance is concentrating its attacks on this location because it's so easy to attack it. It's so stupid, of course, what the Zionists are doing there. But their ego and their supremacist ideals make them think that they can achieve military victory through this tactic of creating this corridor. And it's just working against them. Every day, the resistance is blowing up armaments and bulldozers that are passing through this. Every day, the resistance is targeting the concentrations of soldiers when they come in and their command centers and what have you. And yesterday there was that video of at least 6 bulldozers being blown up in this area because, again, it's so exposed.
So let's talk about the Yemeni contribution. Now, from everything I've heard, they've also hit some new missiles into occupied Palestine. So can you take us through that?
Yes, the Yemenis are beginning to ramp up their attacks. As this battlefield in Lebanon expands, as the intensity of the attack increases, we should be expecting that both the Yemeni resistance and the Iraqi resistance to also increase their attacks. And that's exactly what's happening. And so, the Yemenis are firing their hypersonic ballistic cruise missiles as well as drones on Israeli bases in the south of Palestine. And that is similarly happening with the Iraqi resistance. And they are concentrating their attacks on the air bases in the south of Palestine and the center of Palestine, as well as in the situation of the Iraqi resistance, the Israeli bases in and around the Golan Heights. And that serves two things. One, as the major airfields of Israel are destroyed now in the north of Palestine, the Israeli Air Force is having to depend heavily on its airports in the center and south of Palestine, as well as starting from last night, the use of Cypriot airfields in Cyprus. So we remember Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah saying that he will be destroying the airfields in Cyprus if the Israelis use them in their attacks. So that's coming. And at the same time, it's easier for the Yemeni missiles and drones to reach the airfields in the south because anything that's fired from Lebanon will have to go through all of the air defenses of the Zionist colony to reach those airfields in the south. So we see how the components of the axis of resistance are organizing their activities in a central command and control center, and each one of them is being given a specific objective in this battle, and it's working very flawlessly.
All right, like, so we're going to shift it now to the Canadian scene. I think the first story is this protest meltdown that came about in Toronto. There's this protest about the mercury poisonings in Grassy Narrows. And so the essence of it is there's this school in Toronto that was telling parents that their students were going to go observe a protest. Now this protest had a Palestine contingent, and there ended up being pro-Palestine chants in it. The conundrum is that the form signed indicated that there would be no participation. And there's two things here, right? A, I've covered the rallies in person. I'm sure you have, Laith. I mean, obviously you have. Um, many a person goes on the sidewalk, right? So there's already that conundrum there, right? A bad faith actor can just manipulate, observing from the sidewalk to be, oh, you're in the protest, right? But there's a second thing, which is that I believe it was like a blue shirt of sorts that was being asked for settlers to wear. And one Jewish kid was asked, among others, to wear that as a settler, right? And this triggered a dramatic, catatonic meltdown, right? And we've already so this situation is already a very interesting one because on one side, if they actually did participate and they did actually violate what was set out in the form, that is actually a problem on its own, right? Not because of the cause, but because of an actual violation of what the parents signed on to. But here's the thing, that's not clear. That's not clear. But regardless of that, what has happened is this. You've had a TDSB statement basically backing off, apologizing. Looks like there's going to be a special board meeting in the day or so after we record this. So there may be updates by the time this comes out. Leith, this whole situation, what do you think? Seems like a mess.
First off, I would like to send my solidarity to the Ojibwe people in Grassy Narrows. I have visited them many times during my time in apartheid Canada. I have stayed with them for long period since the beginning of 2002. Was a community that I consider to be my family. Much of their leaders are people that are very close friends of mine. So, and I can just note one thing. In 2003, early 2003, we sent a Palestinian delegation to Grassy Narrows, students going from Montreal to there. And the RCMP, CSIS, Ontario Provincial Police had a freak out at the time and set up blockades all around the reserve of Grassy Narrows, and where taking people out of their cars, searching all their cars, and asking everybody, where are the Palestinians? Okay. So, we did reach there, and our brothers and sisters in Grassy Narrows put up the Palestinian flag on the blockade, which prompted the RCMP to fly a helicopter nonstop for the whole period we were there, the 3 days over the reserve. This is why, not only because of indigenous people understanding that what's happening in Palestine is related and similar to what's happening to them and what happened to them in colonialism in Canada, that these, and because of these building of long-term relationships with our brothers and sisters, is this why people from Grassy Narrows will, without being prompted, say free Palestine. Okay, there was no infiltrators that went into this demo to put Palestine on, or there wasn't a Palestine contingent. It is the indigenous people of Grassy Narrows that carry Palestine in their heart too. So to the hell with the Toronto School Board, to the hell with all the Zionists in Canada, to the hell with the Ministry of Education of Canada that has been refusing for decades to modify the educational materials to even reflect indigenous realities in Canada, let alone Palestine. So We stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Grassy Narrows. And if there is any Palestinian, Arab, or Muslim people viewing us right now, it is your duty to go to the board meeting for the Toronto School Board and to take it over, to force Palestine on the agenda, to either make the school board actually admit that there's a genocide in Palestine, that there is an ongoing genocide in Grassy Narrows, or to not allow this board to have any meeting or to be able to come to any resolutions that are anti-Palestinian and anti-Indigenous.
Certainly, and I mean, speaking of the education ministry, right? I've talked about this in the last year or so. Yeah, I personally was caught up in this propaganda blitz, thinking about it, what gets prioritized and what doesn't, right? This Holodomor genocide crap that they've been pushing against the Soviet Union for decades on decades on decades, right? That got millions of Canadian dollars from the government, from the Ontario government. That actually went to my high school. High school was Runnymede Collegiate Institute. It actually went there during grade 12, my last year there, and I got caught up in that propaganda crap. But that was there, right? They've all that money, all that effort there. They could go hardcore on that anti-socialist crap. But the education around Indigenous nations in Canada was just a farce, utter farce, utter farce. It was just, stuff happened, there was treaties, etc., and that was it. That was it. It was just a complete whitewashing, right? It's the education system of the colonizer, and I mean, that's just unfortunately a natural reaction for the colonizer to do that, but it's not acceptable.
Yes, I mean, there is many Indigenous educators that for decades, and I know these people in person. There was many times that provincial governments or the federal government said that they're going to review the educational, books from grade 1 till high school to change them, and created these Indigenous educational committees that wrote all the curriculum from grade 1 to grade 12, the parts that need to be integrated about Indigenous. And every time after these committees, whether they were provincial or federal, delivered their final product, it was thrown in the garbage and nothing happened. And this is, just from my personal knowledge and experience with people for the last 20 years. Okay, so this has been going on probably much longer. And every time effort and time is spent by the Indigenous community, their educators, their historians, to try to fix this problematic. And every time their efforts are just thrown in the garbage. So one wonders if this will ever change. And in my mind, it will not. Therefore, Indigenous people should begin taking control of the education process in Canada as a whole, not only to their own children. I think they should have the right to control all education in Canada, to program children of settlers, colonists, and immigrants to understand what's happening. Look at how these Zionists have the right to educate their children with hate, propaganda, supremacist ideals funded by the government. This is what's happening in these quote unquote Jewish schools. There's Zionist schools, they're not Jewish schools. And I expect that or in my mind, the Indigenous people should be the only ones that have the right to dictate what is education for children in Canada.
All right, Laith. So one of the things I'm looking to talk about too is this situation happened last week, but we didn't manage to get to it. Artur Wilczynski. He was formerly in the Canadian government. This guy's a hardcore Zionist. He goes under the liberal Zionism garb. This fascist false imagery, right? That's very popular in Canada and Western countries. Though, let's be real here, it's getting less popular, right? Kahanists are going up for a reason. Liberal Zionists are not really serving their function anymore. But Wilczynski used to be the University of Ottawa's special advisor on anti-Semitism. And he was there for about 3 months, starting pretty much in the summer. And he finally, there was actually some consequences for somebody cheering on the pager attacks, the pager terrorism attacks in against Lebanon by Israel. He cheered him on. And he basically got pressured into resigning, right? So this guy is somebody who's very fitting for the trash heap. I want to read one of the we want to read one of the tweets he made today on September 17th, a few days ago, about 8 days ago. Today's targeting of Hezbollah operatives was brilliant. Yeah, the children and the women and the doctors, everybody's Hezbollah, you idiot. Actually, shit, I'm gonna have to pull that or else I'm gonna get censored on YouTube. It struck a major blow against a terror group that has fired thousands of rockets against civilians, all while the useless UN mission in Lebanon stands by. There is a price to pay. Hashtag Hezbollah, hashtag FAFO. And then he just had some sort of picture of a pager. Funny enough, kind of a similar pager that Meir Weinstein, and we'll get to that later, was using in his posts, making certain threats. But again, like we'll save that for the next topic. Let's talk about Wilczynski. You got any run-ins with this guy? I feel like you have run-ins with half the government.
Yeah, luckily I didn't have run-ins with this piece of garbage. But the anti-Semitism, quote unquote, czar in the United States, she, on a panel this last week, also was being asked about these pagers by the host of this panel and asked her if they're terrorism or not. And she said, "Do you want a pager? Beep, beep." So this is the equivalent of House Father in Canada, the anti-Semitism czar in the United States. And she's glorifying a terrorist act. And so it is actually, I'm surprised that this piece of garbage in the University of Ottawa actually got punished for doing what the majority of Zionists in the elite in the West were doing, which is, they were enjoying the death of Lebanese civilians and the use of booby-trapped civilian objects. So yeah, no, I mean that tells you maybe, obviously the difference between the US and Canada is that the Arab and Muslim communities in Canada are much more significant in terms of percentage of the population. The United States for over 100 years had a hidden, secret, unannounced quota on Arabs and Muslims. Okay. And this is why, in comparison to all of the Western states, it has the lowest percentage of Arab and Muslims, even in comparison to something like New Zealand at the edge of the planet. So, that shows you how there is a possibility of change if the Arab and Muslim communities actually act according to their weight and stop groveling at the feet of these politicians. The politicians need to come and kiss the feet of Arabic and Muslim communities to guarantee themselves a seat, and it shouldn't be the other way around.
All right, so sticking on the pagers topic in Canada, we have that fascist Kahanist Meir Weinstein, former head of the JDL Canadian chapter, now JDL in America, registered as a terrorist organization, if I'm correct. But of course, they did a rebranding for JDL Canada. It's Israel now, and Stephen Ellis talked about that for the Canada Fellows months and months, actually almost a year earlier. than it really came to be in the public eye. But Weinstein and Kahanist, I think, speaks for itself. But why we're talking about him is that he was pretty much making death threats against some Palestinians. There was Gada Sasa, who's a PhD student, I believe, out in Hamilton, and she's a Palestinian, and she made a death threat against also made a death threat against you, Laith. But then he went outside of the Palestinians. He actually made a death threat against Dimitri Lascaris as well, and then a U of T student protester, Sait Simsek, among others. So let's talk about this, rabid running dog of imperialism, Meir Weinstein. Give it all, Life.
Yeah, I mean, that's his job. His job is to be the rabid dog on behalf of the Zionist establishment and the police and intelligence services of Canada and the elite of Canada. He's supposed to play this role. And, the police in Canada and the intelligence services know who he is. They know that he's a terrorist. They know that he's associated with the worst terrorists in Israel, and they let him be. They want him to threaten physically and mentally Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim communities and anybody that stands with them because they can't do that themselves publicly, right? Of course, he's a coward. He's a wuss, this guy. And all of these fascists of the Kahan are like hyenas, right? They cannot fight the lion directly. They will have to bring with them a gang. I remember many times being physically threatened by these people. And the minute that I, physically show my resistance, they would run away like chickens. Okay. Only when they are in a big pack of hyenas do they think that they have a chance. I remember there was 3 different Zionists that tried to assault me in the McGill campus. This is in 2002. I just turned around and put my fists up, and they just ran away because they didn't expect me to fight back. So these are the garbage, weaklings, worms that think that they find a safety behind a computer online, sending these death threats, behind the protection of the whole Zionist lobby. There's a Canadian security services and police and politicians that protect them. But if you see them face to face, there was one other time that Meir Weinstein tried to threaten, assault somebody in Montreal, and this activist, very courageous activist, punched him one punch, and Meir Weinstein was flat on the floor, out cold, knocked out. So in a way, this man will continue doing what he's doing as long as he has the protection that he has.
All right, Laith. So I want to talk about this situation there's a Palestinian lady in Canada, and I believe her daughter died in occupied Palestine because she wasn't able to this so-called program for a Canadian government to bring in people from occupied Palestine basically just failed to do anything, right? Samar Al-Dur, I believe it is, who is the major protester. She's been doing sit-ins and protests and has confronted Minister Mark Miller multiple times before. Weren't able to get to this last episode, so I want to bring degeneracy of the Canadian state. Right? Palestinians in Canada are treated like scum, right? And it's good that there's more pushback, but I also think we should remember that to broaden the struggle, that Chinese Canadians are treated like scum, and Russian Canadians are treated like scum, and Iranian Canadians are treated like scum, and so much more. And I mean, don't even get me started on occupied Indigenous nations in Canada, right? So I always bring this up. I think the Campbells are one of the few in the country who really bring it up in the media because I think there's this disunified approach between the diasporas in Canada, and I think that's extremely harmful in terms of getting anything done, right? Because someone like Al needs, to get justice for the fact that her daughter died, and the Canadian government needs to be forced to honor these programs. But these groups they all want to fight alone.
Yeah, first off, Mark Miller is a piece of garbage. I've met him personally before. He is the representative for the riding that I live in. He also attacked the Community Media Advocacy Center, which I work for in Canada, because we had a summer job subsidy for some youth a few years ago, and the Zionists found out that Mark Miller, as the member of parliament for the neighborhood, who usually, the member of parliament for each riding is the one that okays summer job subsidies for students. He had approved those. And he came out in the media blabbing, saying, "We're going to claw back every little, dollar we gave." And I cracked up. Of course, he's a wuss. He's a weakling. He has no power to do nothing. He couldn't take back any 1 cent from CMAC, and the Canadian government will not be able to get anything back. They're all boasting for their masters, their owners, the Zionist lobby that owns Mark Miller. Okay, Mark Miller also was at a point the Indigenous Affairs Minister, and we saw his disgusting treatment of the Indigenous people and the many clashes he had with the indigenous nations. And so it's not, surprising that this coward, this wuss, this house slave of Zionism, Mark Miller, is calling the police and arresting a resident of his riding, who's just demonstrating peacefully outside his office to get her family out of the extermination camp of Gaza. And so this man should be hounded in his home. His family should be hounded, like he is hounding the families of Palestinians that are requesting, family reunification and exit from the extermination camp. He shouldn't have one moment of peace in his life.
All right, Laith. So I think we're going to only have one more topic, and that is, I think Canadians need an overview about Canada and its role in terms of subverting Lebanon, because I've seen reporting from Clarenberg and the like about Britain's attempts to subvert, have like military actually come on to Lebanon, the attempts to infiltrate and target Lebanese security services to go against Hezbollah. But I haven't seen too much talk about what Canada is doing to Lebanon. So, can you give any insights you might have there?
Well, the Canadian government is spending a lot of money on the quote unquote NGO sector here, specifically on these media initiatives that are supposed to be independent or alternative, but are all coming out as imperialist and pro-Zionist. That's the majority of where Canada is spending its money. We're also, seeing the Canadian military build up in Cyprus, along with other NATO and Western militaries. So we don't know where Canada is willing to go with its interference here in Lebanon. But if there is at one point some Canadian of soldiers that land on the territory of Lebanon, they should be all expected to come back in coffins.
All right, Laith. Now we will leave this episode there. So, to the Campfellow's audience, thanks for making it to the end of the episode as always. If you want to support the journalism of Canada Fellows, Free Palestine TV. If you appreciate the analysis in this show, in this series, please support financially both Canada Fellows and Free Palestine TV with a monthly, annual, or one-time donation. So Laith, thanks for co-hosting as always.
See you soon.
And thanks to the audience again for making it to the end of this episode. Take care, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.